Hello everyone, my name is Lily, and today I'm going to be talking about the movie The Birds. So, I'm just going to jump right into it. I recently watched The Birds on Netflix because that's where movies go to die, I think, and I knew the name Alfred Hitchcock as it flashed on screen. I didn't know what for, but I knew I knew it. And then I saw the story by message, and I learned that the original story was by a woman, Daphne du Maurier, which I believe to be one serious author name. Like, that's an author name if I've ever heard one. Anyway, tangent. We'll revisit her at the end, because I think the concept of her book was vastly more interesting than Hitchcock's take on birds attack everybody. Alright, so the movie began, and I think maybe my attention span is worse than I originally thought. Back then being the 60s, or back then in American movies, I should say, there were subtleties that you were meant to pick up on that are vastly different from those that we're used to today. I think we've grown less subtle as a culture, which is fine. But it definitely made viewing this movie especially difficult, and it made it almost exhausting. I'm clearly supposed to think something when a shot lingers on Tippi Hedren's face a couple seconds too long, but I'm not sure what. More on that soon. So the first scene in the movie instantly captures your attention, which, I mean, yeah, it's the first scene of the movie. That's what it's supposed to do. So it succeeds in that respect. But Tippi Hedren's character, Melanie Daniels, walks like a woman itching to be free of her pencil skirt into a bird store. A kid whistles at her, and she does the vain womanly thing of being like, oh my god, thank you so much. Yeah, so she stops to smile about that. So my first interpretation of the scene was bullshit. Because as any woman knows, like, being whistled at on the street is not a pleasant experience. Especially, it's especially violating when it's children whistling at you, because there's this weird implication behind that child is just going to continue doing that for the rest of their lives, and women will never be free, because that'll just get passed down through the ages as it has been so far. But I digress. After reading more about how we're supposed to interpret Melanie's character, the scene becomes very intentional to me. So Melanie is a socialite, and at the very least, an attention whore. At least that's the narrative within this scene. It's also worth mentioning that the scene was, to me, meant to conjure up laughs from the audience, who realistically know that no woman is stopping in the street to be like, oh my god, an 8-year-old whistled at me. And that if she is, she's got to be a little bit psycho. So I think that's supposed to tell us something about her character, although it does kind of remove me from the moment, because it's like, hello, like, what's happening? This is me giving Hitchcock the benefit of the doubt, and assuming that the scene was meant to be more about Melanie's attitude towards life than Hitchcock's own attitude towards women, which would make sense if you had any context about who Alfred Hitchcock is and all of the various creative forms of sexual harassment he dipped his toes into throughout his career. For now, though, Melanie enters the store to pick up the birds she had ordered because, in 1960s New York City, there's such a thing as a bird store, and you can order birds to be brought to you, which is pretty fucking lit, in my opinion. But she heads to the bird store to pick up birds she had ordered that haven't yet arrived, and her exchange with the store owner is strange. It's very, very, very strange, and it goes on way too long. At least, again, all of this is in my opinion. So, at least in my opinion, this goes on way too long. I guess if I wanted to squeeze some meaning out of it, it'd be that because Melanie thinks the birds should be sent to her apartment, considering the bird delivery people are late, then we can assume that her character is fussy, entitled, and impatient. All things that are a little bit true. So, in that regard, again, like, if I really squint, it makes sense. But it's no excuse for this scene being like literally 5 minutes of them just staring at each other in silence. Yeah, after this, a man with a very clear agenda, or rather, a man who clearly has an agenda, not a very clear agenda, because to me, it's all very convoluted why he's even here, but whatever. This man, clearly with an agenda, enters the bird store and climbs the stairs toward Melanie, who proceeds to stare strangely at him from across the room. And then, oh God, he looks at her with this weird look of like, haha, I know who you are. And she looks at him with, I'm gonna play a prank right now. See, one thing about Melanie that you will learn is she is a silly goose. For their entire drawn-out exchange, the man, whose name is Mitch Brenner, he's played by Rod Taylor, smiles at Melanie in the perfectly condescending way you might expect to be smiled at by a tall man in 1963. This scene is meant to be an introduction to both characters beyond like, oh, Melanie likes being whistled at and this guy is tall. Melanie is the attention-seeking, prank-loving socialite, pretending for a moment to be a bird salesman, to like be like, haha, I got the drop on this guy. He thinks I'm a bird salesman and I'm not, which to me is a shit prank because I don't know, why are you, it just feels like she's cosplaying being in the working class. You also meet Mitch, who is an all-knowing ornithology god, looking for lovebirds as a gift for his little sister. And pretending to not know who Melanie really is. Turns out that he knows her from some court case a while back where she played a prank and, you know, I guess it had some legal consequences, except that she didn't actually go to jail. So, consequences, schmonsequences. The one thing this movie got right is that rich people get away with everything. After a ridiculously lengthy scene, again, of the two pacing around, discussing birds, and many attempts from Mitch to humiliate Melanie by calling her bluff little by little, the store owner interrupts them and the two part ways. Also, Mitch does tell her, like, oh, hey, by the way, I know who you are and I'm just fucking around. Also, I know what lovebirds are. And I know what all of these birds are. Actually, you're a dumb bitch and I'm gonna dip. And that's how they first meet. And this is her love interest. Like, it sounds like, I guess it could be enemies to lovers, or like, oh, they're just messing around, they're just having a flirty little back and forth. But to me, it's like, I don't know, you just showed up, dunked on me, and pissed off. I don't think that would be like super charming to me. But anyway, to summarize a good bit of the exposition here, because that's not really why I'm filming this video, Melanie uses contacts from her father's news agency to learn who Mitch really is. And his neighbor tells her where Mitch is headed because there's no sense of privacy in 1963. So Mitch is going to Bodega Bay, California, where his family lives on a farm, or at least his mother and his sister, his little sister. His dad is not in this movie. So after traveling a good bit and asking around, because again, it's 1963 and asking around is the only way you can find out anything, apparently, Melanie discovers Mitch's little sister's name, which is creepy, where his family stays on the island, creepy, and how to hire a boat to get there, insane. I get it to a degree, because don't get me wrong, when I was down bad for men, I was down horrible, I was down horrific. I totally understand desperation, and me and Sabrina Carpenter do not have that in common, but damn girl, leave the boat at home. It's gonna be okay. It'll be alright if we don't roll up on him in a boat, but whatever. At this point, we meet my favorite character in this movie, a dark-haired chain smoker with a velvety deep voice and light, beautiful eyes, Annie Hayworth. I am 110% gay for this woman. So Annie is the school teacher at Bodega Bay, and to my surprise, a somewhat tragic character, especially as she had such potential to be more than what she ends up being in this film, which just kind of is sad. Her character just kind of is sad. Although there is nothing more like gangster than greeting someone who just pulled up to your house and is knocking on the door, and you come out from the side with like a cigarette hanging out of your mouth and you're covered in dirt from gardening, and then you're like, can I help you? Like, oh my god. Oh my god. Maybe I'm projecting. Maybe this is too much, but like, damn, I wish I was her, you know? Annie turns out to be an ally to fellow women because she meets Melanie and is like, hello, woman loitering on my porch. Have a cigarette. I know nothing about you. Yeah, she's an ally to fellow women, a curious mind, and a symbol of wanting. If you really, really want to get like something out of this movie, that's what I took from Annie's character. It's because of her curiosity and understanding that she tells Melanie what Mitch's sister's name is, you know, even though that's probably not a great thing to do. And if in this day and age, if someone rolls up on you and is like, hey, what's this guy's little sister's name? I might suggest not telling them without further investigation. Despite clearly not believing that Melanie is Mitch's friend, as she tells him, Annie proceeds to tell her the child's name is Kathy, and again offers Melanie a cigarette, so obviously that's why I love her. Now, we part from Annie to take a boat to the Brenner's home. And by take a boat to the Brenner's home, I mean Melanie takes a boat to the Brenner's home. She breaks in, leaves the lovebirds. Did I mention she bought lovebirds from the bird store to leave for Mitch's little sister as a birthday gift? And I guess it was going to be like a ha-ha, I know where you live type thing. Hee hee hee. You messed with me? Well, here's birds. I don't know, man. Anyway, so Melanie takes a boat to the Brenner's home, breaks in, leaves the lovebirds and a note in the home for Kathy, the child, again, Mitch's little sister, and she dips. She puts like great effort into making sure she arrives on this island quietly, and that's like a big part of it. Like, the suspense is up there. The movie has like no music in it, I'm pretty sure, and in this scene, it is dead silent except for the sound of her sneaking. She sneakily takes a boat and she sneakily watches his family depart, and she sneakily crawls up onto land and then sneakily breaks into the house and then sneakily places the birds and then sneakily sneaks out of the house and then sneakily gets on the boat where she sneakily ducks when Mitch looks over to try to find her. But then she peeks up again sneakily, just for Mitch to find her. Like, just for Mitch to look over with his binoculars and be like, ha, I found you. And she's like, hee, you found me. I wanted you to find me this whole time. And it's like, girl, then why were we doing all this? Why were we doing so many sneaky things? Why were we sneaking? It's okay. You don't have to be sneaky all the time. Anyway, this movie's insane. She hangs around by the shore in her dinghy and allows Mitch to spot her and intercept her as she pulls back into shore. So it's here, during this supposedly romantic moment. I don't know, it feels strange. I thought she was kind of going to get arrested. but like, imagine if she wasn't super hot. Imagine this if she wasn't super attractive. Anyway, so it's here during this moment that a seagull just drops from the sky and scratches Melanie on the face. So Mitch ushers her inside a nearby diner where Melanie makes attempt after attempt to pretend that she didn't spend at least a day stalking him and insisting she's actually just a friend of Annie's who's visiting. Mitch obviously doesn't believe her, and he invites her to dinner with his mother and little sister, which I think is honestly really rude, considering his mom is next to him in the diner, and he's like, oh, Mom, meet Melanie, my friend. And his mom's like, oh, hi, I wasn't expecting to meet anyone. And then he's like, also, Mom, you wouldn't mind feeding someone else today, right? Here's another mouth for you to feed. We're all going to eat dinner together. Right? Melanie, you want to come for dinner? And Melanie's like, yeah, I'll come for dinner. And Lydia, Mitch's mom, is like, okay, I guess. Like, you just signed me up for this. I don't have any other options. Also, Melanie just broke into my fucking house. Hello? Although Lydia doesn't know that right now, but that's beside the point. At dinner now, because that's where we are now, Melanie is shot some unsavory glances from Lydia, Mitch's mom, who thinks Melanie is an unsavory character because the gossip columns told her so. I do appreciate this movie for including the all too common Mother-in-law hates daughter-in-law. Slash older woman dislikes beautiful, younger, happier woman. Effect that I think every girl has experienced at some point in her life and feels like a sort of projection because older women grew up in a time where they weren't free to make the decisions that we can make now, and they kind of project that envy onto us. But that's a different subject for a different day. After dinner, Melanie plays piano and talks to Kathy, again, Mitch's little sister, who begs Melanie to come to her birthday party the next day for reasons that are not totally clear to me. This is an adult woman who, I mean, yes, she bought you birds, but it's kind of like when you meet your aunt who is like, oh, I got you a Bratz doll, and you're like, wow, thanks. And then it's like, I don't know, it's like if I then invited my aunt to come to a sleepover with me. I don't know, like, it just doesn't make sense. It just feels like a gesture that a random adult friend of your mom's would do. That doesn't mean you have to like be besties now. Anyway, so on Melanie's way out, she and Mitch get into a little argument where he invites her to stay the night. He's under the impression she's a loose woman. He doesn't say that, but he invites her to stay the night because he's like, girl, I know you don't have anywhere else to stay. Like, I know you're not a friend of Annie's. And she's like, well, first of all, fuck you. I am a friend of Annie's. And second of all, I'm not going to stay with you. I'm not a slut, okay? I'm not everything you think I am just because I'm super hot and gossip columns said I danced naked in a fountain when actually I was pushed and I wasn't naked. Melanie's clearly offended, and she takes off for Annie's house like the hysterical woman she is. And now, because Annie is the best character in this movie, she allows Melanie to stay with her and rent a room that Annie was actually saving for a long-term renter instead. It's now female bonding time. So Melanie rants to Annie about being confused and annoyed by Mitch and his bum-ass mom. And this is when Annie finally reveals to Melanie that Mitch was also the entire reason she came to Bodega Bay. So they knew each other from, I think it was San Francisco, and she followed him to Bodega Bay, but they like were dating, so it wasn't weird in the way Melanie's whole plot is. And Annie adored him and wanted to be near him, but Mitch's overbearing mom didn't like her, so it didn't work out. And to me, this insinuates that Mitch's mom is stupid and doesn't know a beautiful, stunning, wonderful woman when she sees one. And two, Mitch is a coward. I don't know, how old is he? He's got to be at least in his 30s. Make a decision without your mom. So Mitch, in all of his brilliant, interrupts girl time when he calls Annie's house to ask for Melanie because it's already been 10 minutes since they last spoke and she's not getting any younger. To patch things up from earlier, he invites Melanie to Kathy's birthday party the next day, which, I mean, again, like, I would not want to go to this child's birthday party. And if I was the child, I really wouldn't want this random blonde woman there, but whatever. I have to stop inserting myself into the story. So, peer pressure works. Melanie goes to the party. This is where we learn a little bit more about her upbringing before the children are attacked by birds for an excessive amount of time. It's really obnoxious. We then have a time skip to dinner at the Brenners, where even more birds enter through the chimney and assault everyone in the home. The police are unhelpful, which, I mean, yeah. Not sure what we expected there. The next day we get what is, in my opinion, the first truly deeply uncomfortable scene in the movie, when Mitch's mother, Lydia, finds their neighbor's eyeless corpse slumped over in a room littered with feathers and broken glass. And I think a big part of this scene is super terrifying because it is silent and they really build up the suspense. So much so that I was tempted to fast forward through her long traveling like into the house, and then she like is looking at the cups that are broken and she's looking at the broken glass and she's like, oh no, what could have happened here? And it's like everybody knows what happened here. But you don't expect the corpse. You know there's going to be a corpse because there's feet. but you don't expect the corpse to have no eyes, and you don't expect the fucking triple zoom. The 1, 2, 3. So I love how this scene is done. Obviously, the triple zoom, the eerie silence, and of course, Lydia Brenner's loose-limbed run at the camera, which I think she just did a wonderful job of showing just how hysterical women can be. Yeah, so after that, we are then brought back to the house where Melanie makes Lydia tea because she's better than me. I would not have done that. I would not have done that for the mother-in-law that scorned Annie. Not happening. So she's bonding with Lydia and she's like, oh, have some tea. And Lydia is actually having a really deep conversation about like how she's scared and death and all that stuff. And then she's like, well, I'm really worried about like Kathy at school and all that stuff. And Melanie's like, girl, don't even worry about it. I can go check on Kathy. And I thought for sure Lydia was going to be murdered in the like 10 minutes that Melanie was going to go get Kathy. But this is where shit really, 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 really hits the fan. So Melanie goes off to the schoolhouse, the one-room schoolhouse, which looks like a church, and sits on the playground, like waiting for Kathy to get out of school so she can escort her home. And she notices the birds, obviously. I mean, birds have been attacking everyone, so how do you not notice all the birds? I think it's crows or ravens or one of the I think it's crows. I'm pretty sure it's crows that are gathering kind of around her. And this scene, again, it's done so freaking well. Like, you have Melanie sitting there and she's like all happy, like, I mean, not happy, but like she's kind of content and the weather's fine and she's like a little chilly, but she's got like a cigarette probably, if I'm remembering correctly. And she's sitting on a bench and you know, you see a couple birds, but she then becomes aware of the sudden wall of birds behind her. And like freezes and is like, oh shit. And like slowly kind of walks away and then runs into the schoolhouse and is like, Annie, hey, do not let the children out for recess. They're going to be victims. So Annie and Melanie work to get the children out of the house. So it's kind of insinuated that the birds react badly to like sound, like aggressive sounds, like footsteps, like running or shouting, screaming, all that kind of stuff. But it's also insinuated that the birds attack like every 40 minutes or something. And they have like an attack period and then they wait. And then they have an attack period and then they wait. So it's just fascinating to me how they, like, Melanie kind of realizes that the birds don't react well to sound. And she has the kids run anyways. Like, she's like, all right, get the fuck out. Like, here's what we're going to do is we're all going to line up and we're going to split. And that's, again, this is where shit really hits the fan. Crows, seagulls, whatever birds are attacking them at this moment, because there's so many birds in this movie. You never would have guessed it. It's called The Birds and there's birds in it. But the kids get absolutely attacked. And when I tell you that this scene, it's almost comical. Like, it's stress-inducing because of all the aggressive bird noises. Which makes sense, but it feels like they rely a little bit too heavily on that. And then someone's glasses break somehow. And then, like, kids are bloody. It's just so ridiculous. Like, the kids are, like, bloody and running and screaming and gonna get trampled. And Melanie's, like bringing them into the car. And it's a whole thing. The kids are attacked. And Melanie eventually, we time skip again. But suddenly Melanie is at the diner. And she's like, guys, the birds are, like, attacking us. You know, like, it's the birds. The birds are killing us. The birds are killing people. There's a bird attack. And some people believe her. Others don't. It's like, I don't know. If you don't believe her, maybe, like, go ask one of the bloodied children. Hello? You know, there was, like, eyeless corpse 2 days ago, not even, like a day ago. People don't believe her is a back and forth. I really enjoy this diner scene. It is funny, and you know, you end up really liking the bartender. I guess not bartender, but like the guy at the... No, he is a bartender. I'm now considering the fact that there's like a bar at a diner. I didn't think about that before. Why can't I order like liquor at a diner anymore? Somebody tell me, because that sounds like a sick experience. It sounds like a lot of fun. I'm getting off track. Everything goes to shit. Nobody believes Melanie except a couple people. The radio is kind of, like the news is kind of catching on to this story. Not really. They're like, oh, there's been a couple bird attacks, but the locals are being so wacky about it. You know, who doesn't get scratched by seagulls? After that part, oh my god. This is, again, oh my god, I keep saying this is when shit hits the fan, but this is when shit hits the fan. Because, guess what? There's another bird attack. And this time, everybody in the diner gets to experience it. And the men rush out to go help, and the women and the children stay in and, you know, keep each other safe, I guess. And this guy pulls up in his car, and the bird attack that just happened led to, like, a gas thing, like, being loose. And this guy is at the gas station and, like, puts a cigarette in his mouth. And they're like, don't light it, don't light it. I mean, and he lights it. And just fucking goes up in flames. And now it's pandemonium. Like, now it's crazy. Everything's everywhere. Birds are screaming. Melanie's in a glass box suddenly. And then the glass box starts to break. And then Mitch grabs her. And Mitch is like, oh my god, I'm going to keep you safe. And they go back to the home. And this is where, like, the kind of psychological thriller aspect of it comes in. I'm telling you, this movie is way too long. There's way too many scenes to this movie. Like, there were probably 40 different bird attacks. It's like, yeah, I get it. The birds are attacking. We don't need to do this. We can, like, let's keep the story going. Like, I know the story includes the birds attacking, but, like, there's no use in repeating that constantly. So we go back to the Brenner's home where Mitch is nailing boards to the walls and Kathy's so traumatized. This fucking child. This child is terrified. And, you know, they still have lovebirds in the house and the lovebirds have been fine. So then it's insinuated almost that this is all happening to them because they have the lovebirds in a cage. It's just there's a lot of ways you could interpret this movie, which sometimes works really, really, really well in movies, and sometimes things just get convoluted and you lose sight of the original story, which I think happened in this movie. The ending, I'm skipping all over the place right now because I do not want to go through all of this again. There is a scene where Melanie gets brutally, viciously ripped apart by birds, and you think, like, oh, it's over for her, she's dead. And then you also think, man, Alfred Hitchcock sure loves his women distressed and in danger. But Mitch saves her again. Because, I don't know, it's just, that's all bro does in this movie. And then they eventually, I guess, quote, escape through the car. They drive back to San Francisco, and the birds just kind of watch them go. And it feels like a very unsatisfying ending because it's clearly supposed to be like, oh, you interpret what happens, like if the birds follow them because they took the lovebirds with them, or if the birds leave them alone because it's only a Bodega Bay thing, or maybe the birds leave them alone because they're not making any noise now. Like, there's too many options. And so they drive away and nothing is insinuated. Like, it's just kind of all up to the audience, which is fine, except it feels so lazy. Like, it feels like they could have been doing this the whole time. They could have driven away forever ago, and they just haven't. The bird attacks have been kind of constant, but there have been breaks. They could have driven away before it got this bad. And it's exhausting. It's an exhausting movie to sit and watch. And it's an exhausting storyline with exhaustingly long scenes that lead up to nothing, an absolute nothing ending. So, in that way, I was not a fan of the movie. Now, though, I would like to discuss Daphne du Maurier, her version of the story, so the original author, why she wrote a story about birds attacking people, and how her story differs, which this movie was never meant to be a direct interpretation of The Birds, the novel, which you can tell because it takes a lot of creative liberties, but it was inspired by, you know. So we'll talk about Daphne du Maurier and then Alfred Hitchcock and media and the way media seems to really relish in women's pain and suffering, and how that is almost substituted as a storyline when you have nothing better to say. So tune in for that, because that's going to be my next video. I hope you enjoyed this really all over the place summation. I've kind of set it up to be spiked whenever I create the next video. So I guess I'll see you next time.